Young Steve was like a young beast trapped in a cage, with even the slightest trivial matter able to ignite the anger in his chest. When the soup at dinner is not hot enough, or when his sister accidentally knocks over his backpack, he would erupt with sharp and hurtful roars. The tears of his mother and the shrinking of his sister were both ignored by him in his moment of anger. The father watched silently, neither scolding nor lecturing. One evening, the father handed Steve a heavy bag of long iron nails and a hammer. "Starting tomorrow," the father said, pointing to the newly painted white wooden fence in the backyard, "whenever you can't control your temper and feel like shouting at someone, go and hammer a nail into the fence." On the first day, a deafening knocking sound came from the backyard. Steve angrily swung the hammer, as if he wanted to vent all his dissatisfaction with the world onto the wood. That evening, there were 37 crooked nails added to the fence, their sharp heads particularly glaring in the sunset. As the days went by, Steve realized that driving nails into hard wood was not easy, and it required a tremendous amount of physical strength. He began to learn to take 3 deep breaths when anger surged up his throat. Gradually, the knocking sound became sparse. He was surprised to find that controlling his temper was actually easier than driving in a nail. Finally, there was a whole day when Steve didn't pick up the hammer. He excitedly grabbed his father's hand and said, "Dad, I didn't lose my temper even once today." The father patted his shoulder with satisfaction and said, "Good boy. Now every time you successfully suppress a surge of anger, or realize you are about to lose control and choose to speak gently, go and pull out a nail." The process of pulling out nails is slower and more laborious than driving them in. Steve must concentrate fully and carefully wiggle the nails to avoid damaging more of the wood grain. A few months later, the last nail finally fell into the bag. Steve looked at the brand new bag and felt like he had been reborn. He invited his father to see his achievements. His father held his hand and slowly walked to the fence. "Child, you have learned to control yourself, which is remarkable," the father said in a low voice, pointing at the dense and various-sized black holes on the wooden fence. "But you see, the fence can never return to the way it was before." Steve leaned in closer to take a look. Some of the holes still had cracked wood shavings, while others were bottomless. Even if he later pulled out more carefully, the fibers inside the wood had long since broken. The father crouched down and calmly looked into Steve's eyes. "Words spoken in anger are like these nails. When you lash out at others, those words will pierce into their hearts like sharp arrows. You can apologize afterward and ask for forgiveness, just like pulling out a nail. However, the wounds on the soul will leave scars just like these holes forever. An apology can remove the nail, but it cannot erase the holes." At that moment, Steve looked at the fence, and his mind flashed with the image of his mother's swollen eyes and his sister's trembling shoulders. Anger is a form of energy. Venting it may provide temporary relief, but the damage is irreversible. True awareness is seeing the fire within oneself before the hammer is raised and the nail falls, and learning to extinguish it with the gentle touch of reason. Our entire lives are spent repairing relationships, but the highest form of repair is choosing not to hurt from the very beginning.